All right, so welcome to those of you joining us on YouTube now as well. My name is Jamie Vibach, and I'm the Will County Director for the Conservation Foundation. I want to welcome you all today. Thanks so much for joining us on this, our first December webinar of the year. We've got 2 more after this one this year, so and then we will see you back in 2021. So everyone is muted, your cameras are off, so if you're joining us in your jammies, no judgment over here. This webinar is going to be recorded, as I mentioned, so we'll have it up on our YouTube channel. I usually have them up within about a day. You can also find all of our past webinars on our YouTube channel as well. If you have a question at any point throughout the webinar, please go ahead and use that Q&A box that you'll see down there at the bottom. That lets everybody else see your questions. It also makes it easier for us to find them in the when we go to our Q&A portion. Sometimes the questions can get lost in the chat, but we will make sure to answer them as best we can at the end. For your safety, you should also only be able to post anything that I might put in the chat, but in case I missed a setting, please don't click links other than what I may post in there. These webinars, as I mentioned, are offered to the public for free, but we do encourage you to consider a donation or a membership. The more people that we have attending, the more it costs us to run them. So at the end of the webinar, when you close out your camera screen, you're going to see a page with a whole bunch of resources, things you might be interested in, conservation type things, but also our virtual tip jar. So if you're enjoying these webinars, I do encourage you to donate to help keep us running. And then you can also click the button to become a member, so you can enjoy our wide variety of members only stuff as well. And to sweeten the deal, we have a grant going on right now that's going to match all new donations through the end of the year. It was up to $75,000, but because of everyone's generosity, we've actually made that goal, and they have increased it now to $100,000. So if you donate $25, we will actually get $50 out of that. So if you're thinking about donating, now is a really great time to do that. As I mentioned, we're doing these webinars every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Next week, we're going to be joined by another friend of ours, Terry Measley, who's going to be talking about crawling, digging, and flying through your yard, our 6-legged friends. So we're going to be talking about bugs next week. So very, very cool. Terry is a fabulous photographer. I know he's going to have some really great pictures to show you. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friends at Wings and Talons. So take it away, Nabil.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Jamie. Jamie mentioned we're Wings and Talons. My name is Nabil. We have also with us today David, who is going to be the handler who is going to be bringing our birds for us today. Today's program is about hunters of the night. We're going to be talking about birds of prey. Now, we really love birds of prey because they are our most constant and immediate reminder of wildlife around us. Now, you look out your window, you walk outside, you may not even have to leave your bedroom. You can hear wild birds. You walk outside, you're almost guaranteed to see at least one wild bird. We've got so many kinds of birds around us. We have songbirds, you've got crows, you've got waterfowl, we've got sandhill cranes, we've got geese, ducks, and we also have birds of prey like hawks and eagles and falcons and owls. Owls are a little bit special, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have in today's program 4 owls that we'll be sharing with you, and you guys will have a chance to look at and learn about. Now, owls are birds of prey, which means that they have to catch and kill what they eat. They are top of the chain carnivorous predators. Now, worldwide, you can find owls on every continent except maybe Antarctica and maybe the Arctic. There's more than 200 species of owls all over the world. In the US, we have about 17 species of owls. In Illinois and in the Midwest, you can commonly come across 6 or 7 different types of owls. We today have a range of these different owls. The first of which is going to be our, take it away, David.
Okay, so this is our male barred owl, spelled B-A-R-R-E-D. So as you can see, he has lots of barring on his feathers, and that's where the species and name comes from. So all of the birds that live with us are considered non-releasable into the wild. That means that they are unable to take care of themselves and survive on their own. So he actually lives with us because he's what we would call a mal-imprint. There's nothing physically wrong with him, but because he was too habituated to people at a young age, we can't release him back into the wild because he doesn't have those skills to take care of himself. Out in the wild, you typically find these guys around waterways, or what we would call riparian habitat. So they're going to be found along streams and rivers in the woods. That's where they prefer to live.
Thank you, David. Before we take him away, there's going to be a quiz at the end of this. You can't just, this is not a program where you can just kick back and enjoy. What I want you to do is take very close attention to the shape of their heads, the size of the bird, as we bring these birds along, and David is going to talk to you at the end about how these are very fascinating and very interesting characteristics of these owls. Okay, now I am going to show you something about owls in general while David gets some of our other owls. I would like to talk about their eyesight. Now, owls, as you know, are mostly nocturnal, which means they hunt at night. There are some diurnal birds which also hunt in the daytime. We don't have many of those here in the Midwestern Illinois. We might see snowy owls. Snowy owls are resident up in the Arctic Circle. And as you know, it's daytime, 6 months of the year, and so it doesn't really help them to hunt just at night. So if you see snowy owls down here sometimes as part of their not really migration, but something called eruption, in which they move territory every now and then. You might see them in the daytime. Another daytime owl that you might see if you're down south are burrowing owls. These again are owls that, desert habitat owls, and so they spend a lot of time out in the daytime. But for us, we have owls that mostly hunt at night. Now, even among owls that hunt at night, we have some owls that are what we call crepuscular. These are primarily active during the dawn and dusk times. And then we have other truly nocturnal owls who hunt in the dead of night. Now, if you're going to hunt when it's dark, you have to have very, very extraordinarily good eyesight. Owls, it's kind of hard to say how good their eyesight is, but based on the number of rods and cones, these are special cells in your eye that help you discern color and low light. Owls have almost 8 times the number of rods that humans have. So, and rods are primarily really good for catching movement and things in very low light. So we can estimate that owls have an eyesight that's almost maybe 8 times better than our eyesight. Now they can see in the daytime too. They also can see very well in the dark. The next thing I want you to notice when we bring out our next owl is also, before you talk, okay. Now, I'd like you to notice the size of this owl's eyes. David's going to talk a little bit about what kind of owl this is and a little bit of history about this owl, and then we'll go more into the eyesight of owls.
Okay, so you can see that this owl is a little smaller than the one that we just saw. So he is a screech owl, and there are several different species of screech owl around the world. He is what we would call a Western screech owl. So he is native to the North America. Out in the wild, you typically find them west of the Rocky Mountains. And that is basically the dividing line between the Western screech owl and the Eastern screech owl, which we have here in Illinois. So you can kind of see on him that one of his wings is a little lower than the other. When he was out in the wild, he hit something. We're not entirely sure what, but that caused some damage to the wing. It actually broke at one point, but unfortunately, while the bone has healed, he hasn't regained full control of that wing. So because of that, he'll be living with us the rest of his life. Because he was already an adult when he was turned into the animal hospital, we don't actually know his age. With a lot of birds, that's really hard to tell. So he could be upwards of maybe 10, maybe more. We know he's got to be at least 3 or 4 years old though, because that is how long he's been living with us.
Okay. I asked you to notice the size of your eyes. I'm going to hold up a replica of a skull from a great horned owl. And what I want you to notice is the size of the socket of their eyes. If you notice, they're almost a third of the size of his total skull. And I want you to do a little experiment. Hold up and tell me how big your eyes are. They're about the size of maybe a grape, okay? Now, this great horned owl's eye is only just slightly smaller than my eye, but his head is many times smaller than my head. What does this tell us? This tells us that eyesight is a very, very important sense for owls. In addition to that, I also want you to notice the socket of the eye for this owl. You can see it's almost tubular. Now you have a ball that's an eye, which means that I can move my eyeballs in their socket. An owl's eyes are almost like a telescope. They're long and cylindrical, and they fit in the socket that's a little bit almost like a tube, which means they can't move their eyeballs around to be able to see things or track things. If they can't do that, they need to be able to turn their heads. And they can turn their heads very, very well. Now, a human, I can maybe turn my head about 90 degrees each way, and I have 7 vertebrae in my neck that let me do that. An owl, on the other hand, can turn their head 270 degrees each way, which means 90, 180, that's as much as I can do, 270. They have 14 vertebrae in their neck that let them do that. Now, this lets them track their prey with that wonderful eyesight that they have and without moving the rest of their body. The next owl we have for you, again, remember, I want you to notice the size of the owls, the shape of their faces and the shape of their heads and the color of their eyes. And we have a...
Okay, here we have our great horned owl. So you can see she's definitely larger than some of the other owls that I brought up prior. So if she lets us get closer to the camera, you can see where the name great horned comes from. So those aren't actually horns on her head, those are still just feathers, and they're not even her ears either. So she lives with us because, again, she's what we would call a mal-imprinted bird. Someone actually took her out of the wild and tried to make a pet out of her. So not only is that illegal, most people don't have the skills or the knowledge to take care of birds like this. They're all meant to be wild animals, but so even again, though there's nothing physically wrong with her, because she never got the chance to be a wild bird, we can't release her into the wild. So they're actually one of the most common owls in North America. They're pretty adaptable. So you'll see them in woods, in cities, even in your suburbs. They might be living on your balcony. So definitely look for great horned owls around the area. And when you think about an owl call, this is probably going to be the owl that you think of most frequently. So most people think of an owl as making the general hoot sound. So when you hear that out in the wild, especially in North America, that's most likely going to be a great horned owl.
So on the note of calls, I'm going to play what a great horned owl would sound like. Many of you have said that you've heard owls. This is a very common call. This particular call is actually a duet. So you can see you can hear two owls calling out to each other. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Hey. That is one of the calls you might have commonly heard and you associate with owls. So this again is the call of a great horned owl. The other large owl that you might find in this area is the barred owl that you saw. And I'm going to try to play what a typical call of a barred owl would be. And there you have it. These, again, are the most two common owls that you might find in this area. The great horned owl is something that you might most likely see. I don't know if you can hear, but she actually made a real hoot down there. She's a little bit upset that we brought her up and took her back again. So, okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is the feathers of owls. These are special from other birds of prey. Now, owls are not very fast creatures. They don't have to chase their prey and hunt them down. They hunt with a lot of stealth, which means that they need to be able to fly very, very quietly. Remember, they use hearing to be able to track their prey too, which means that if they make noise with their feathers, that's going to drown out the sounds of the prey that they're trying to catch. I have with me here a wing from a great horned owl. This is a small great horned owl, but if you were here, you'd be able to feel just how light and strong these feathers are. In addition to that, this doesn't translate very well over the camera, but I'm flapping this wing as hard as I can, but you still can't hear any noise at all. So owls have a very special, let me see if we can, the tips of their feathers have these little fringes on them that, if you look at them in a high-speed camera, slowed down very much, and you see the patterns of the air that flow over, the air actually flows down here and causes little vortices that cancel out all noise, in which case when they fly, they're absolutely very, very, very quiet. And this is something that you won't see in other diurnal birds of prey like hawks and falcons and eagles. They use a lot of speed in order to get to their prey. Being able to sneak up behind their prey is not really an option because it's daytime, the other prey can see them, so they have to use speed. Owls, on the other hand, masters of stealth. Okay, the next bird we have now is something that I'm guaranteed that all of you have heard about, but especially in Illinois, hardly anyone would have ever seen one of these.
Okay, so for everyone who hasn't seen one of these before, this is a barn owl. So back in the day when we used to have a lot more barns on the farms, that's where they used to nest. That's where the species name came from. They like to nest in open structures, and they are actually a threatened and endangered species in some states because we don't have those open structures for them to nest in anymore. And we've reduced a lot of the prairie. That is primarily where they like to hunt. So you'll see them at night soaring over the prairie, trying to find rodents. That is their favorite thing to eat. So she doesn't actually have any injuries. Because barn owls are a threatened and endangered species in different parts of the world, there are lots of places that do captive breeding programs to try and help the wild population. So oftentimes when they're doing programs like that, they will keep a couple of hatchlings back every year and use them for education so that places like us can go out and teach people about them and inspire the next generation of future conservationists.
This one doesn't hoot.
So she does not hoot like you would expect. If I were to get out a mouse right now, you'd probably hear her do what almost sounds like a shrieking. So people actually used to think they were ghosts back in the woods because they would see this big white thing flying through the trees and hearing the shriek afterwards.
Okay, I'm going to try to play a call. Now, normally she's very vocal, but today for some reason she's really interested in the surroundings. So, hold on. All right, that is definitely not a hoot. um, Barn owls are actually really very interesting. The barn owls, you can find them in almost every continent. You can find them all over the world. Barn owls are actually a very, very ancient family of owls. They are actually their own family. All other owls are a different family, which is why they actually look a little bit different too. We have fossil records of barn owls going back, in this country, going back 25, 30 million years ago. So they've been around for quite a bit. Unfortunately, we hardly have any wild barn owls left in Illinois. They are not threatened. They do very well. Illinois, the prairie state, is supposed to be much prairie left. We've lost a lot of habitat for barn owls, and she right here is our ambassador bird. Now, while we have her up here, I want to talk a little bit about the extremely good hearing that owls have. Now, one thing you've noticed about owls is that they have they almost have a face, right? They have these large disc-shaped features that make it look like they have a face. In the barn owl, it's very pronounced. She has that heart-shaped facial disc. Barn owls have that adaptation because it also helps them hear very well. You can't see her ears, but they're right behind where the eyes would be. So almost like where your ears would be behind your eyes along a straight line, her ears are right there too. Now, you have earlobes that help funnel sound into your ear and amplify what you're hearing. She doesn't have earlobes. Instead, she has those large facial discs that serve the same purpose. David is holding her up quite close, and you should be able to see the feathers on her face that are almost like bristles. And if you notice, they're laid out in a radial pattern. Now, these feathers are very special because they are also acoustically reflective, which means that they almost act like a large satellite dish that focuses sound from a large area down into her ears. Now, in addition to that, she has 2 ears like you do. And now when you have 2 ears, you can do something called triangulation, which means that your brain knows how to calculate the difference in the time that it takes for the same sound to reach your 2 different eardrums. Now, using that, you can get an approximate idea of the direction of where the sound was. Now, this feature in owls is very highly developed. Her ears are actually asymmetrical. If we took a skull of her and looked at it, you'd find that on one side, one of the ears is a little bit higher, and I think even a little bit behind than the other ear, which is a little bit lower and a little bit in front. What this lets her do is almost see her surroundings by listening to the sounds. So she can almost paint a picture of what's going on around her in 3D, almost like radar. Now, what you see her doing over there as she moves her head back and forth is also another way of pinpointing sounds. Now, she can hear all kinds of sounds around us. We're pretty sure that they can even hear and discern the heartbeat of a mouse, which is their prey, from quite far away and even hiding under leaves and forest vegetation and even under snow. So what she's doing over there as she moves her head back and forth a little bit is she's trying to get different focus on the sounds that she's hearing. And so she's able to, in addition to see things, also perceive her surroundings using her extraordinary hearing. Okay. You've seen our 4 owls, and I asked you to take a careful note of their sizes, the shape of their heads, and the color of their eyes. Now, I don't know how many of you noticed, but some of our birds had really dark eyes, and some of them had eyes that were colored yellow. David's going to tell you a little bit about what the features and what these colors mean, and also things about the shape of their head.
So Nabil talked a little bit earlier about how different owls are active at different parts of the day. So one way to generally tell when an owl might be active is by looking at their eye color. So when you see the all brown or all black eyes, that is basically surrounding their pupil. That often signifies that the bird's mostly active at night. So those are going to be the nocturnal owls. So while we say these are generally a good guideline, there's always exceptions to every rule in nature. So contrary to our brown and black pupils, the owls that you saw that had yellow around the pupils, the dusk and dawn birds.
Okay, the next part of the segment is something that is very interesting and something that we particularly like. So what we're going to do is talk about their feeding habits. Okay, now I don't have their actual food items over here, but I'm going to go through a representation of the different things that they would mostly eat. I told you that owls are carnivorous creatures. They're obligate carnivores, which means they have to eat meat. They hunt and catch what they eat. There's a range of things that they would eat. Now, each of these birds has a preferred prey, things that they would mostly go after, things that make up a majority of the portion of their diet. Now, in the most case, it's usually small rodents and small mammals like mice and rats and voles and shrews and moles and things like that. Now, I have with me some props. I'm going to go over them just to give you an idea of the range of things that they would eat. Now, I want you to remember that owls will, or most birds of prey, will pretty much eat anything they can catch and kill. They do have preferred prey, but prey doesn't always cooperate. They don't wait around to get hunted. And hunting is a very resource intensive and it's a full-time job. So sometimes you'll find that these owls have to, they have a wide range of prey. They're sometimes very, very adaptable. All right, so I'm gonna bring up a few things and let's see what we have over here. Okay. I have a bunch of stuffed animals down here. This is what a typical, prey for most owls would be. It's a mouse. Mice are really a staple for a lot of creatures, and owls in particular. She's actually looking at this mouse and then she's turning away. All right, so that's one thing. This is supposed to be a rat. Now, barn owls may not go after rats, but we have other birds, like the great horned owl, for instance, who is much more larger, much more massive, who would actually might go after rats. I have here some bugs. Now, again, this is not the preferred prey, but these are things that sometimes you'll find birds of prey going after. Sometimes even something larger like crickets and grasshoppers if they need to, or even snakes if they can get a chance to do that. What I'm trying to impress upon you guys is a range of diet that they have. All right, here's a couple of other things that specific, like certain owls might eat. Crayfish, uh, frogs, salamanders, and other amphibious creatures. The barred owl that you saw before, David mentioned they like to, one of their habitat is a riparian environment, which means that you'll find them mostly where you have wooded forests that also have some kind of a water feature in them, moving streams or rivers or lakes, because one of the things that barred owls will also go after is uh, amphibious creatures. Okay. All right. This is another thing that owls might sometimes go after. It's what is this, blue jay?
Looks like an eastern bluebird.
Okay, it looks like an eastern bluebird, but this is representative of songbirds. Now, birds are not very easy to catch, but most of these birds roost at night. Now, if an owl is able to sneak up behind them while they're roosting, and the opportunity presents themselves, they will go ahead and go after these birds. So birds also form a small portion of the diet of owls. This is not a very good representation, but what about this? All right, this is also an owl, also a predator, but predator sometimes also becomes prey. You saw the barred owl and you saw the great horned owl. We'll bring them out before we end the program again. But I don't know if you noticed, but they're pretty much the same size. The barred owl stands about 18 inches tall, and the great horned owl, the specimen we have is a little bit on the small side, but she's about the same size if you look at them. The barred owl, though, weighs only about 1.5 pounds. I think this morning she weighed in at maybe, 18 ounces? So she's slightly over 1 pound. The great horned owl, on the other hand, weighs in at almost 3.5 pounds. Now she's a small specimen, so a large female great horned owl around here could easily mass 5 or 6 pounds. Now I want to bring this up because great horned owls are extremely powerful creatures. They are absolutely at the top of the food chain. The single largest predator of barred owls are great horned owls. Now, David also mentioned that some of these owls hunt mostly in the dawn and dusk. The great horned owl, if you remember, she had eyes that are almost yellow colored. So she's most active at dawn and dusk. She's a crepuscular bird. Barred owls, on the other hand, stay out of trouble at that time. They roost during that time if they can, because they could become prey for great horned owls. And instead, the darkness of their eyes shows that they hunt mostly in the dead and the middle of the night. Okay. I also want to show you, on the topic of food, this is a talon and claws from the foot of a great horned owl. This is a really small male great horned owl that unfortunately had to be put down, and so we harvested some of these pieces so we can use as educational. What I do want to show you is they have feathers all the way down to the talons. This serves multiple purposes. Remember, owls have to sneak up behind their prey. They have to be absolutely silent. So having feathers all the way down here is also an adaptation that helps them mask any kinds of sounds as they sneak up behind their prey. I'm not sure how well you can see, but right under there are these very rough structures. They almost look like soles and treads on your climbing boots. Those help the bird perch, and in addition to that, also help her grab their prey and hold onto their prey. Now, these are her talons, pretty sizable. She have 4 talons, and the talons keep growing. The talons are just made of the same material that are made of from your nails. So they're made out of keratin, and they keep growing. In addition, they also have a bone that goes right in the middle, and so they're very, very strong. Their grip is extremely strong. They don't have to squeeze like you have to do with your fingers. The muscles in there and the tissues in there are actually formed in the form of almost like a ratchet. So all she has to do is clamp her feet and they'll stay there in that position. And that's how they'll go ahead and get their prey, catch their prey and kill their prey. Birds of prey have beaks that are that look very intimidating, but their beak is not their primary weapon. The beak is only used just for eating, but their feet are their most formidable weapon. All right, now we are actually going to see, we spoke a little bit about the food that we have. We're gonna try to feed the barn owl and see what she does when she actually, she's already, oh, just a moment. She's already jumpy. She's noticed the food. Let me switch camera. Let me switch. Okay.
And now you heard a barn owl in real life. So as you can see, she's holding it in her beak.
Give it a just.
And with owls, she may not do it today, but most owls eat their prey whole. It looks like she might give it a go.
So the one thing, since she's eating it whole, she also made sure that she got the head in first. All right, let's see if we can do that again. Now she's grasping with her talons to make sure she can hold on to her food while the rest of it goes down, and then have the mouse head first. Now, like just David mentioned, if the mouse is a little bit larger, she might tear it up into chunks, but owls like to swallow their food whole if they can. Another thing I want you to notice is the size of her beak and the size of her prey. We'll go a little bit into that. It's really difficult to see how she manages to swallow something like that whole, but she doesn't want to let go. She's still trying to get the rest of the mouse that she had to go down. And she's going to hold on to that for a while. Okay, now while we're at the topic, she has a beak. She has no teeth, which means that she can't really chew her food and break it up in your mouth before she swallows it like a mammal would do. So here what you can see, she's using her talons to hold it down and eat this in smaller pieces. And her eating means she's going to swallow it. Now, if she swallows it without chewing it, she has a special organ just before her intestines called the gizzard. Now, the gizzard is a very, very tough muscle. It's a very tough organ that takes the function of what your teeth would use to chew down the food. So the gizzard actually smooshes the food all the way down. And when she does that, the portions that can be digested and nutrients can be extracted go down into their intestines to be absorbed by the body. And the pieces that she couldn't digest, things like fur and bones and sometimes a tail and pieces like that, those get compacted by the gizzard and then thrown up as a pellet. And that's why owl pellets, as you can see, they like to swallow their food whole. It's why typically you can see, when you dissect a pellet, you'll be able to see almost the entire contents of what went into her meal. Okay. Now, while she's eating that, I hope this doesn't gross you out, but this is a circle of life that you're seeing right there. So we don't feed the owls a live prey. We feed them every day. Raising and having them chase after live prey is not a very good option. So we get prey of different size. We get them frozen from a specialist supplier. We thaw them out, and then we feed them to our birds. Okay. let's see. There's a couple of questions that I see over here that I'm going to jump in and start answering. Some of these are actually a little bit interesting.
Yeah, we do have several very good questions here. If you want, I can read them to you.
Okay, if you don't mind, please. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jay.
not a problem. So first of all, somebody would like to know, is it true that owls will catch and eat young raccoons?
Young raccoons. Well, that's a very interesting question. Let me actually bring up something over here, which I forgot to bring up as part of the food preparation. All right. This is not something that I would normally be holding here this bravely. It's a skunk. And our skunks are very distinctively patterned because they want their potential predators to know that they have a very potent weapon in terms of their very strong and noxious scents that they can spray onto animals. Now, the only creature that hunts and relishes going after skunks are great horned owls. Now, great horned owls have a wingspan of about maybe 4.5 feet, but their talons are actually much stronger and almost the size of a bald eagle, which has a wingspan almost of almost 8 feet. And so that should give an indication of the strength that a great horned owl has. A great horned owl weighs about 3.5 to 4 to 5 pounds. They are strong enough to catch, kill, and carry away prey almost 3 times their mass. So a skunk is very easy prey for great horned owls. They can go ahead and kill them. They can kill raccoons. They have the strength to do that. Now, raccoons are not their preferred prey again. They normally wouldn't go after raccoons, but especially in the first year after they fledge, hunting is, part of it is instinctive, but a lot of it also has to be learned. So in the first year, they're also learning how to hunt their prey. They're learning how to figure out which is their proper prey. And that is the time when sometimes they might confuse, they might go after small pets, small dogs, for instance, before they learn that this is not something that's very palatable for me. So you're absolutely right. It's possible that great horned owls can go after raccoons, but more likely they might go after skunks. They have a very, very rudimentary sense of smell. Hunting at night, smell really doesn't help them quite as much as eyesight and hearing. And so the skunks can spray all they want. It really doesn't bother a great horned owl. A great horned owl is a very good predator of skunks and things like that, and larger mammals like that.
Great horned owls are about the only predator of skunks,
only
as far as I know.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because skunks have these very distinctive markings that they've developed that they want to warn. They don't run and hide. They actually want to show their colors and tell them, look, don't mess with me. This actually works really well for great horned owls because they can see them really well. The stripe down their back almost lines up with their spine, which is where the great horned owl will sink the large talons in and grab the skunk and get rid of them.
Yeah, everybody else sees it as a warning sign, and for owls, it's more like a free food here.
Here, that's right.
Chris wants to know, do they eat squirrels too?
Absolutely, they do. Yes. Now, squirrels are another large mammal that they can, a small mammal that they can actually grab and eat. Mice, again, are their most preferred prey. The thing with squirrels is squirrels aren't very active at night, unlike mice and rats, and which is why mice and rats make up a larger proportion. But yes, squirrels are something that are potentially prey for owls.
Carol says, and this was something I hadn't really thought. She said she was up early one morning in the summer, looked out her patio door and saw an owl grab a bat in midair.
Okay, now especially if now owls, they prefer to hunt at night and mostly roost in the daytime. But if owls are actively raising a family, you'll find them hunting out even in the daytime sometimes. If there's a dearth of food, they don't have enough food, they're not going to sit around, wait till nighttime to come. They can actually do this. And yes, again, we saw a wide range of the kind of prey that they go after, the kind of food that they eat. if opportunity presents, if there's something that they can catch and kill and eat, they will end up doing that.
All right. Yeah, that surprises me. She said it was about 3 a.m. and dark. So yeah, that would make sense. I I guess I don't normally picture them pulling things out of midair.
Out of midair, and you're right, and that's kind of difficult for them to do. And bats are, bats are a creature. They don't have feathers, they just have skin, but they are extremely agile and extraordinary flyers. So this is one of those things, there's no hard and fast rules. Again, the more you work with these animals, you try to generalize them, you find out that there's things that they do that surprise you in nature.
Yeah. All right. Let's see some other questions here. A couple of questions about, finding headless rabbits, rabbit fur on the ground. Very likely that, that to me, that would say owl.
Right, and it could also very well be hawks. Red-tailed hawks are another most common large predator that you'll find around here, well, pretty much all over North America. And you'll find them going after rabbits and birds like that. And then interesting that you brought that up, because there's another reason why these birds hunt at night and some birds hunt in the daytime. You realize that these birds share the same ecosystem, the same environment. And in order for them to thrive and live in the same place side by side, this is one adaptation that they have. So owls hunt at night and you have hawks hunting in the daytime. So in pretty much any environment, you'll find an equivalent creature that hunts in the daytime and something that mimics that creature's place in the food chain at night. The red-tailed hawk, the equivalent of red-tailed hawk for night would be a great horned owl. They go after the largest and strong prey. They're the strongest creatures for daytime and nighttime. And you'll find this down the food chain, down different sizes of owls. Same thing with the screech owl. The screech owl is a very diminutive bird. It's a very small bird, and there's equivalent of those birds that hunt in the daytime. You have smaller, you have Cooper's hawks, you have Sharpies. I'm trying to think of a few other birds that are equivalent, but these are the common birds that you'll find around here. Okay.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about them as having, daytime, nighttime kind of companions. That's a great point.
And the same thing with the prey too. You'll find, even just like you have squirrels that are most active in the daytime, you'll find rats and mice that eat pretty much the same thing, but they take over the night shift.
I like that idea, the day shift and the night shift. That's kind of cool. Switching gears a little bit, let's talk a little bit on barn owls, even though we've just brought out our great horned owl friend again. Bridget wants to know the natural nesting site of barn owls. So before there were barns, what sorts of habitats did they occupy?
Sure. So barn owls are what we would call cavity nesters. So before we had all these open structures, we had lots of dead trees that maybe had some holes in them. So barn owls would actually use those types of trees in order to make their nests in and provide for their young. So nowadays, we actually don't keep many of those trees around because we think of them as an eyesore, because who wants a dead tree in their yard? But those structures actually provide a lot of homes for wildlife. So unfortunately, we don't have as many barns, we don't have as many dead trees anymore. So that's part of why barn owls are a threatened species in a lot of parts of the country.
So, and that's great. That feeds actually into the next question. So Jenny wanted to know, is there anything we can do in our backyards to help provide habitat for barn owls, assuming a barn is out of the question? And so leaving those snags, those dead trees, leaving those standing provides habitat, not just for owls, but for many other types of animals as well.
Absolutely. And the Conservation Foundation, part of what they promote is open land, open spaces, natural landscape, and waterways, right? So what does that look like? That looks like, skin and the lungs and your lifeblood of the land around you. And that's exactly what it is. So you provide two things. You provide habitat, and habitat automatically provides food. Now, habitat means habitat for the entire ecosystem that we see. If you provide, even in a small patch in your backyard, of how the native land used to be, prairies and native grasses and meadows, instead of just grass and fancy annuals and things that look seemingly pretty. If you do that, then you start a small portion where life can thrive all the way from the microorganisms in the soil to the tiny bugs that feed on them, to the larger bugs that feed on them, to the mice, and in turn to the top of the food chain, which is the birds of prey around you, which is also another important point because we also call birds of prey creatures at the top of the food chain indicator species, which means that they can only thrive around us if everything else in the ecosystem is in good shape. So this is like the canary in the coal mine. These are birds of prey in our community and our ecosystem.
Absolutely. Amy wants to know, are captive raised barn owls being released anywhere in Illinois or the Midwest?
Well, that's an interesting point. We're actually coming to you from Springbrook Nature Center in Itasca. Itasca is one of the suburbs in Chicago. And a while back, we had a program where we would breed barn owls and release them out to see if they can repopulate. They tracked the birds. The program, unfortunately, was not very successful. And what we realized is that it's not just enough for us to breed them and release them. They also need habitat in order for them to be able to successfully live, raise their brood, and further multiply. And that is what our biggest problem is. This goes back to what we need to do. More than anything else, all we need to do is provide habitat. The Conservation Foundation does a great job of trying to preserve native patches of land and forest features around us. These are some of the things that we need to do. Having more of these will in turn automatically increase the chances of wild creatures like these birds and other owls coming back. But right now, that is the problem, having lack of the meadows, the kind of landscape that the Midwest is very famous for. Large rolling meadows and stands of trees. Don't have much of that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we always talk about is, all living things you learn when you're in grade school need food, shelter, space. And so to have an animal in that habitat, it's got to have those three things. So if they've got a space for shelter, if they've got those, for example, the big, tall, dead trees, plenty of open grasslands that are going to provide the mice and the other food sources for them, then, that's what's going to encourage them to be there.
Absolutely. And that's the single best thing that we can do. These birds have been here before any humans came on this continent, and we just have to make sure that they're still around here after we're gone. So we just need to give them their space. That's all they need from us, really.
So Richard wants to know if an appropriately sized bird house would be of value to owls. So I've heard about owl nesting boxes and things. Would that be something that some people could put up in their yard?
Yes, absolutely, you could. We also now the more options we give them, the better. It's hard for us to. There's no formula that says if you put one up here, this is how they're going to come. But the more options we give, the better. But in addition to that, it's not just like Jamie mentioned. It's three things. It's not just a place to nest. In order for them to nest and successfully raise a brood, they also need to have enough of a range that supports the prey that they need. So it's a multi-pronged approach. You have places for them to nest. You have places that surround them that have habitat that can support the kind of food and prey that they need, and give them enough space to live there and do that. And that is part of the success. But yes, putting up nest boxes actually can't hurt. Just like David mentioned, there's a dearth of cavities. Owls don't build nests. They don't. Now, great-horned owls might take over. She's strong enough to move into a red-tail's nest and kick the red tail out and stay there. But in general, we will not build nests. They need cavities. So putting up nest boxes is actually a good idea.
Great. On the topic of nesting then, Beth wants to know, why would a male and female be calling back and forth actively this time of year, since it is a bit early for their mating season?
Well, it's actually coming up to the mating season. Now, great horned owls nest in January. They're the earliest nesters that we have around here. Great horned owls, by the way, don't migrate. All the birds that you saw over here don't migrate. They're year-round residents of Illinois. Great horned owls love the cold. January is the coldest, typically coldest time of the year for us. So if they're nesting in January, it means that courtship is going to start around November, December. They also have to stake out their territory. And so the part of that might be not just mating calls, it might be just males trying to establish their range and their territory before they can attract and call out to females who want to move in and share a nest with them.
So my hearing one at 5:30 earlier this week in the morning, there's probably, I'm really hoping that was a male staking out territory, because I would love to have a pair back here again.
And also, if it's late fall, sometimes if the food supply has been good, or the other way around, the fledglings may be still begging for food and calling while the parents are trying to wean them and kick them out and have them move out for the next season. So that might be some of the, and with the weather being the way it is, with a weather pattern extending out cold and hot, and so some of these might affect the actual timing of when these things might happen. So that's why you might see them happening maybe a little bit earlier, a little later in the year.
Okay. Do they mate for life? Oh, looks like we.
That's if they successfully raise a brood, you will find that they mate for life. If they're unsuccessful in raising a brood, then that's when you'll find that they might sometimes break apart and try again in a different place with a different bird. But for the most part, yes.
Oh, okay, very cool. So another interesting thing, when we were talking about feeding, you mentioned how they regurgitate the pellets, the undigestible parts of them. I know I have found a few in the wild. Jenny would like to know if there's any tips. Do you have any tips on finding them in the wild? Because she'd love to. Dissecting them is always so much fun.
Okay, well, you can dissect them. I just have to be a little careful. I mean, these are dead organisms, and so take the appropriate precautions. You're not going to find them in the open part. For the most part, you're going to find them right under trees or where the places they might roost. It's also may not be a good idea to pick up everyone that you find. A pellet isn't just waste. It's also home and food for a whole lot of ground-dwelling beetles and creatures that they create homes out of that. They roll around this food. They eat a bunch of those things too. Your best bet might actually be to get some online. They have they raise birds and harvest pellets from there. You might have better luck doing that. But again, keep your eyes open. If you hear owls, they're there. You can walk around. You should find a place where you might be able to find some pellets. Now, it's not just owls that put out pellets. All birds of prey will pretty much put out pellets. They're not as spectacular in hawks because they tear up their food and they crunch them up, and they sometimes throw out bits and pieces that they don't want to eat. Owls will actually swallow the whole thing. So, and sometimes even some songbirds, some robins and starlings or sparrows might throw up tiny pellets, and they don't have much substance there. Like I said, owl pellets are the most spectacular in terms of. All right, she says it's time. So.
Well, one last question then, if you would. We have someone who lives adjacent to a meadow in South Ontario. So she thinks she's heard owls and always walks with her eyes up looking for them. So any tips on how to better spot an owl?
Spot owls. Okay. Well, the owls that you'd most likely like to see it's going to be great horned owls. And great horned owls really, they're the top. She's alpha predator. Nothing really goes after her, so they don't tend to hide anywhere. And also remember, crepuscular, dawn and dusk birds, you can typically see them silhouetted against tall trees or places like that. It's very hard to see owls. They don't move around much. By nature, they're very stealthy and very quiet. And the great horned owl, for instance, she looks very spectacular and striking right now. But if she was up against a tree, she would just totally melt in. So
Yeah.
all I can say is that now you know a little bit about the kind of habitat that they prefer. You know their calls. Keep staking out the places. Keep walking around. Keep your eyes open. Once you see one, you'll start seeing more. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and some of the photos that I've seen that people have shown, you know, the Facebook groups and all that, people will post some really spectacular photos. But it always just amazes me at how well they blend in. So it's really looking for that silhouette, I think, more than anything, and looking at the cavities in trees. Yeah, they're very, very well camouflaged.
Now, I don't know if you can use eBird. That's also a good place to get sightings of these birds. But I'd also caution you, be cognizant of the fact that these are birds that also need their space. They might be actively nesting, and if you don't give them enough space, you know, observe from a distance. You use binoculars. You can call out to owls, and usually sometimes they'll call back, but try to be a little bit careful about that, because especially when they're staking out territory, a male owl might interpret that as another owl already staked out that territory and move on. So again, use caution. You know where owls can be found. You know what they look like. You know the kind of habitat. Use that to go and start doing your detective work. Pictures of people showing all these owls, they make it look so easy, but there's hours and hours and hours before they can actually spot one. But the reward is worth it. Being able to spot an owl, it's an unforgettable experience.
Absolutely. All right. We have several more questions, but I think we are about out of time right now. So I really want to thank you, rest of Wings and Talons, all of our guest owls today. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been absolutely wonderful, informative, and it's not every day you get to see an owl so up close and enjoying his lunch.
Again, it's our pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to see you back again next Wednesday at 1 o'clock when we're going to learn more about insects, the other end of the food chain, from our owl friends. So thank you, everyone. Oh, look at that little baby. So cute.
Are we done?